Welcome back to another episode of Trash Talk. I'm Jon-Bernard. This is Nick. We are the K-Roos brothers, giving you the fight news that's happening around the world today. Nick's been an interesting week. A lot of fight news, a lot of fight announcements.
Well, UFC 310 got announced.
Yep.
Duplessis teased his fight announcement. Dustin Poirier's teased fight news. So a lot of fight news happening.
Conor McGregor's even throwing in some fight news out there.
The three biggest cards of the year, potentially. Abu Dhabi, New York, and Las Vegas coming up to end the year. So a lot happening. It's nice.
Well, let's get straight into the MMA hot take because Belal versus Shavkat has been announced for UFC 310 in December. This week's MMA hot take is Dana's been saving Shavkat for a UFC champion he wants to take out, and that champion is Belal.
Well, considering that Shavkat hasn't fought since last December, and he's now fighting in December again, that's a 1 year layoff. He could have fought at any point in time. He's been worthy of a title shot for a long time.
Potential wrist injury. I think it was. He did suffer from an injury.
But in saying that, I thought Kamaru Usman would have been the next person in line for the title
definitely
shot.
better.
But that just means that Dana White does not want Belal to have the title because the boogeyman in the UFC is Shavkat Rakhmonov. No one wants to fight him. He's been trying to get fights this whole year. He's got the best probably fight style, the most damaging fight style. You're going to lose Belal. You've got a size disadvantage.
Okay.
He's stronger than you. There's so much wrong with this matchup for Belal. I feel sorry for him. You're going to lose your title straight away.
There's an experience factor. I'm not going to say Belal's done, right? But I think Shavkat comes in as a heavy favorite. The guy's a machine. He's a Kazakhstani machine. He's very well-rounded, can wrestle, can strike. You saw what he did to Stephen Wonderboy in his last. Everyone's been ducking him, been scared of him. There was even that UFC fighting documentary showed that Usman even ducked him, but ended up taking Khamzat, which is, I think, even more of a boogeyman. So, look, I don't know. I think it's a tough fight for Belal, but it's a make-or-break fight for Belal because you
kind of prove yourself as champion.
You got to prove yourself as champion. You're going up against Shavkat, who's probably the most testing fighter in the division, the scariest fighter in the division. If you lose, and you have a good showing, you get a lot of respect. If you win, you prove yourself to be as a great champion. So I don't see him winning because, like I said, the stat came out recently. Belal spent the last 4 hours and 14 minutes in the octagon, doesn't have one knockdown.
Jeez.
So when you're going up against a Shavkat who can maul you himself and also is a very great striker, it's going to be a tough time for Belal. There's a size mismatch as well.
I think for Belal, he has been calling out Shavkat on Twitter. He says that Kamaru Usman's not worthy. He wants to fight Shavkat. So maybe this is Kamaru calling the shots. I want to put all blame on Dana and saying Dana's trying to get the title off Belal. Dana says he likes Belal.
Why saying Belal calling the shots?
Yeah, Belal's called for Shavkat. He wants this fight. I think he knows that he needs to prove himself as champion. I don't think it's a smart idea. I would have rathered Kamaru Usman. I think that sells better as well.
Yeah, but maybe Belal wants this to prove himself. The bloke has to keep proving himself. Everyone on Twitter hates him.
I don't know why.
Everyone, whether you're a live crowd, you're booing him, I think he constantly wants to prove himself. And this fight is saying, if I win, I prove myself as a champion.
Do you think the fight sells?
Look, you're talking about Belal trying to sell a fight and then a bloke from Kazakhstan that doesn't speak English trying to sell a fight as a main event. It's intriguing, but it's going to be tough to sell.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Yeah, but I think the card, this is the rest of the card. UFC 310 was announced. You got Belal versus Shavkat as the main event. Alexandre Pantoja versus, I can't pronounce his last name, Asakura?
A guy making his debut in the UFC who has had...
Asakura.
He's got a bit of fanfare coming in here. Whether he deserved a title shot or not, I think that's a big jump because you got people like Kai Kara France that definitely deserve a title shot.
The wrong Kai got announced.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, how do you make sense of all this? I know Dana White's talked about the rankings, how he's trying to fix the rankings.
Because you give Steve Erceg a shot where he was ranked 7.
10. I think he was ranked 10 at the time.
And now you've given a guy from Ryzen?
He was the champ in Ryzen, which does make sense that he's obviously like a top-tier fighter in that division. But again, has he earned his stripes in the UFC to earn a title shot?
Muhammad Makayev took time out of his Uber driving to react to it on Twitter, just put a laughing emoji and said, like, what's this division coming to, pretty much is what he's saying. Because realistically, if Muhammad Makayev was still in the UFC, he probably gets a shot.
No, he doesn't because
I think he's got the record to show. He's beat everyone that's put in front of him. It was either him, Kai Kara France, or Brandon Royval, who just called out for a title shot again.
Well, Royval deserved it after probably one of the best fights of his career, probably the best fight of his career on that UFC fight night. He's fought for the title before in a close fight. I think it was last December as well, Royval versus Pantoja. But Kai Kara France, unless he doesn't feel good enough after his fight in Perth because it was only a couple months ago, maybe he thinks the turnaround time. I feel like if they offered it to Kai Kara France, he would have taken it. You don't turn down a title shot.
From what I've seen from this Kai Asakura, he looks like a dangerous striker, right? There's been some highlights of him getting disqualified for throwing illegal knees on the ground. I think that might be allowed here in the UFC, but regardless, I want the title off Pantoja. I like Pantoja, great bloke. I just want some life back into this division.
Well, giving it to a foreign fighter.
A foreign fighter that can fight and can be entertaining. Might do the job.
I know he was champion, but if Michael Venom Page came over and got a title shot straight away, there'd be a lot of unhappy fighters. I know the flyweight division is something that people don't really get excited about or really look into much, but it is unfair for him to get the title shot.
Well, I've been looking at his YouTube numbers. His interviews, his fights almost got, double or triple the views of the UFC Fight Night, all the post interviews done there. So, I mean, this guy's got some social intrigue about him. There probably needs to be a superstar to come through that division. Okay, you got Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov.
So a fight that was supposed to happen in Abu Dhabi. It's obviously got moved to UFC 310 in December.
Mm-hmm.
Heavyweight fight. Cyril Gane's return after I think he got mauled by John Jones. So he actually needs to come back and put in a good showing. And Volkov...
Been a while outside the octagon, almost a year plus.
Way more than a year, definitely. So, like, everyone's talking about John Jones' inactivity. Cyril Gane's fighting after John Jones. So,
yeah.
I think he's got a really key fight there. I feel like, UFC 310, they also announced Aljamain Sterling's fight, which is supposed to be
versus
in
Movsar
Utah.
Evelev, yeah.
Just a leftover fight. They've just, everything that could have been earlier in the year, they've just put onto the extra, the last card of the year.
But there's still interesting fights. Like, I want to see Aljo in this division. I want to see how he goes against
that's probably going to be the fight of the night.
I want to see Cyril Gane finally perform. He's got to back up his loss to John Jones and prove that he still belongs in the heavyweight division up there with the best of them. And Volkov's a scary opponent. I'm taking Volkov.
Yeah, you can, but Cyril Gane's probably the better fighter. But the question I want to go to, because when people put out the fight on Twitter, they said this is the UFC 310 card. A lot of the comments were, this is going to be a snooze fest. This is going to be very boring. They weren't a fan of the card. They said this is going to sell nothing. Do you think this does well, and you think the fights on this card are something that's not going to be a snooze fest?
Well, you got Nick Diaz versus Vicente Luque. Fans are excited to see Nick Diaz back in
Well,
the
that's how
octagon.
desperate they are.
No, regardless. So this is what you've got. You've got Belal trying to sell the main event against a Kazakhstani bloke who can't speak English. Then the rest is non-English speaking guys.
Pantoja.
Okay, Pantoja, not the best with English. Against a bloke from Japan, I'm pretty sure. Doesn't speak very much English.
Maybe he does. I don't know. I haven't heard him speak.
No, and then you've got Nick Diaz, who we think is suffering from CTE. He's not the best with words. So I think it's going to be a tough sell from the fighter's point of view and for the casual fans to look. There's some interesting fights. Don't get me wrong, Aljo's on there. I want to see how he goes in that division, but I think it's going to be tough for these fighters to sell this as the final pay-per-view of the year.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think Nick Diaz fighting, I know Ryan mentioned it earlier, is a lot worse than Mike Tyson coming out of retirement, because Mike Tyson is getting financially rewarded heavily.
Yeah.
He's getting paid.
He's getting Netflix money.
Nick Diaz, I don't think he's getting paid that much money to come back for a UFC fight in December.
He's been stuck in that UFC deal, and I think this Vicente Luque fight's been supposed to be on a fight night, and it keeps getting pushed, and it's finally, like you said, it's on the leftover card, last one of the year. Look, sometimes these cards surprise you. It all depends on the fights. It was like the Sphere. The Sphere was this great spectacle, but the fights didn't really live up to it.
Not at all.
So when you have a card where you can get surprised by fights, I think the Volkov fight could be very surprising. And I think the main event, say what you want about Belal, against Shavkat in this mismatch, I think could be a very entertaining fight.
I'm a fan of Belal.
Yeah.
I think he sold his fight pretty well in Manchester, given the circumstances. He tries his hardest. He's a good fighter, and he's ripped the shreds. So, I mean, it's more on Shavkat here to try and make it interesting.
Okay, let's go to other fight news. Dracus du Plessis pretty much confirms that he will fight Sean Strickland in Sydney next February 2025, which I think it's finally we've got some closure on Strickland getting the rematch, getting the title rematch.
It hasn't been 100% confirmed yet. DDP was on I think a podcast or radio station and said that his team has been told that they're going to be fighting in Sydney in February. Strickland then went to Twitter and said, what's with these?
Yeah.
What's with the UFC always putting me in countries that hate me, where the government hates me?
Yeah, it's kind of tough for Strickland. Think about it. He had to go fight in Canada. That was his first
Sydney,
title
Australia,
defense.
no.
Sydney, Australia, the first time where he won the title, right? And you're talking about governments that don't really agree with his form of free speech.
Then Newark, New Jersey.
Yeah, Newark, New Jersey, again, very Democrat state. But regardless, that was probably where he was most loved.
He wants to fight on American soil.
Yeah, he just. I don't think he deserves a home fight.
Well, that's the thing.
They tried to take it to South Africa. Dana said he was working on South Africa, and they'd have to do it outdoors, and he doesn't want the wind or anything impacting the fighters, which is fair. So to do it in Sydney, look, there's a lot of South Africans here. People last time you saw in Sydney, they kind of turned on Izzy and started supporting Strickland mid-fight. So Strickland, say what you want, has a bit of a fan base worldwide. Regardless of where he fights, I think he reclaims the middleweight title.
Strickland got a bit of backlash because they're saying you don't get to dictate where you have a championship fight when you're the contender.
Yeah.
But then some people were confused. They said, you've got to go to Dracus du Plessis' country and fight. They thought Sydney was in South Africa or they thought Dracus was Australian. I don't know. They couldn't really tell the difference.
Accents are similar.
But Dracus is not getting a hometown fight. He's fighting in Sydney, which is, I think, about 10 hours from South Africa. So it's still pretty far.
Yeah.
And Sean Strickland, I think he's welcomed here by the fans. I just don't know if the government like him. That's his problem. His quarrels with the government.
Yeah, I think it'll be a fun press conference again, right? I mean, last time these two fought, it was kind of fireworks. They punched on in the crowd. Sean Strickland was crying on podcasts. They were going back and forth. Maybe it'll be a bit more respectable because they've already fought each other once. They've done the shaking hands, great sportsmanship, whatever it be. But I just think Sean Strickland, this is his one opportunity to reclaim his middleweight champion. If you think you won the title before, you really have to go and take it out of the judge's hands. I think he's going to come forward. It's going to be a different Sean Strickland, one that's looking for a finish.
If Whittaker beats Khamzat, big if, but it could happen. Does he fight Dracus in Sydney? Because that makes a lot more sense. You get the hometown Aussie fighter in Sydney.
I think it's already set in stone. I think Sean Strickland's already been told he's getting the rematch. I think Whittaker could be the backup fighter, but he could just be the next in line for the shot. So you could definitely see, say Strickland beats DDP, a Strickland versus Whittaker. Or again, DDP wins, Whittaker's next in line, especially if he beats Khamzat.
Would you not want to use Whittaker in Sydney?
If Khamzat wins, is Khamzat the next contender?
Well, I think they've both been promised. Dana's promised everyone a title shot. Khamzat was supposed to be, from when he beat Usman, he was supposed to be a title contender.
Yeah, I think Khamzat is definitely in line. And I think Khamzat going in as the favorite beats Whittaker personally and is the next in line. I think it's a title eliminator. Okay, say Strickland and DDP do fight in Sydney. Is this a co-main event? Is it the main event? Well, it was the main event in Perth.
Well, who would main event over Strickland and du Plessis?
I think you could see Alex Pereira, after taking some time off, come back in February, finally fight in Australia. I think you got to go put the light heavyweight title to be a closer.
Well, who's he going to verse though? Because if he's versing Ankalaev, is that bigger than Strickland DDP?
I just think if it's a greater weight and he's a bigger draw. Pereira is the face of the UFC right now.
He's the biggest star.
He's a bigger star. I think he's bigger than Dracus du Plessis, so I think he closes. It could be the main, it could be the co-main. You got to see how they all fall in line.
I don't think they would.
I think Ankalaev would jump at a title shot. I think there's other people, other ranked fighters. Maybe
are they going to go?
Jan would probably jump in.
Are the UFC going back to Brazil anytime soon? Because if they're going to Brazil, I think they're going to save Pereira for Brazil.
I don't think they'll go straight back to Brazil. I think they were disappointed with the last Brazil showing. The crowd didn't really turn up for him. There was no Pereira on the card. Pantoja closing didn't really live up to the hype for Brazil. The crowd wasn't really there. I think it was kind of scheduled for Perth to have Pereira to fight in Perth before it kind of fell through, and then he had to save Utah. So
no. He actually had to save 303, then go to Utah after that.
That's correct. So I mean, Pereira's been saving the UFC all year. I think he could do it again in Australia if he wants to. He loves the Australian crowd. He's always traveling down here.
Hey, if Sean Strickland comes to Australia, I'll be a very happy person because he was fireworks last time.
It was him versus Izzy here was probably the most entertaining fight we've seen on Australian soil. I mean, no, not entertaining fight. Volk Islam was in Perth, don't get me wrong. But in terms of fireworks outside of the octagon,
mate, the lead up to the fight was great, yeah. Save the card.
It'll be great to have him here. Let's talk about some Twitter beef that's been going on. Ilia Topuria, he's been going at everyone. He had his beef with Max Holloway. They faced off in an interview. But he's been going at Belal Muhammad recently. Everyone on the internet hates Belal Muhammad.
Well, Belal Muhammad does do it to himself. He does engage in a lot of Twitter beef with other fighters. I've seen him go at DDP. Yeah. I've seen him go at Conor McGregor. I've seen him go at Kamaru Usman. And that's all in just like the last month. He goes at everybody.
Ilia Topuria pretty much comes out and says, this guy has no takedown. This guy has no knockdowns, no women. Kind of like, he would just basically called him a virgin in a tweet. Then you had DDP react at that. Conor McGregor comes out of the woodwork, so I'd love to land one on his temple. Well, I think these fighters are kind of ganging up on Belal because he's the easy one to pick on right now. But I don't know, Belal might surprise you.
Essentially, Ilia Topuria called Belal Muhammad a fake champion.
Yeah. On an Instagram live.
Belal Muhammad then responded saying, you're walking around with a fake BMF belt. You're the fake champion. You're the wannabe. Mm-hmm. You're the wannabe Conor McGregor, I think he alluded to. And then Ilia Topuria just went to the most low blow and called him a crotch sniffer.
I think he's having a go at his wrestling, obviously. And then
Belal just couldn't help himself. He's calling him the Georgian Colby Covington, which is, I think, a big insult because the way he kind of sees Colby Covington, Ilia Topuria doesn't carry himself like Colby Covington.
Mate, he also put up the meme of him trying to copycat Conor McGregor with the tattoos, the way he grabs the belts at the press conferences. You're saying you're a copycat of or want to be Conor McGregor. I enjoy these Twitter beefs, but I want something to come of it. How many times can we see Belal go at someone or Usman and thing trade off? Usman and Belal trade off. I want to see it cultivate into a fight in the octagon.
Ilia can't fight Belal. It's a two-weight
Could
division
eventually
jump.
happen.
Maybe. I think Belal would have to drop and Ilia would have to go up. So you're asking for a lot. And considering Belal's age...
Could be a BMF fight, though.
No. Belal's going
Belal
nowhere
shouldn't
near
fight for the BMF.
No. His fight style doesn't suit it. I think Ilia Topuria, if he does win, is he BMF if he wins this fight?
Well, not in the books. And he won't... It's not going to his record. He's got the fake replica BMF belt, but... In everyone's mind, he will be the BMF.
Well, that just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. It's like, the BMF title is not on the line. That's
so
been
this is like
established.
Intercontinental versus WWE, but the Intercontinental's not
Only
on the line.
exactly right.
Okay.
Only the actual title.
Well, I feel
on the
like
line.
everyone will understand that Ilia Topuria is the BMF after this fight, but that means he's got to beat Max Holloway, which isn't an easy feat. I think when these guys
I think it was 10-8 Ilia Topuria in this Twitter beef. Okay, I think he got the best of Belal. It's hard because Belal just gets ganged up on by fans and by other fighters. I don't know if it's he's unlikable or it's the way that he thinks he's getting one up on fighters on Twitter, but he just keeps taking L's on Twitter.
He knows what he's doing. This is Belal's way of promoting himself, essentially.
Yeah.
He gets into Twitter spats with other fighters that have bigger followings. He gets his engaged following. He gets them behind himself. He starts getting more clicks, more likes, more engagement.
After December, say Belal beats Shavkat, do you think the Twitter beef's kind of slowed down and people start respecting Belal a bit?
Yeah. He's just once he gets a bit of respect, which he has started to get already. Once he beat Leon, people are like, okay, he's champion. We can't really
convincing win.
You can't really talk shit about him not being a champion or not beating anyone of high worthiness.
Yeah.
So once he beats another fighter like Shavkat, if he does, people will have to say, look, he's beaten two top guys in his division. Mm-hmm. He's beaten the boogeyman of the UFC. What more can you really say about him other than that he's cringe?
Let's move over to Conor McGregor. This guy just loves being on the internet. He was at the recent BKFC event in Marbella, Spain. Okay, so they're going worldwide, bare knuckle boxing. He's now a co-owner of bare knuckle boxing. So his decisions, he can throw his weight around a little bit. They matter. He was doing a lot of media for BKFC. He was calling out KSI, calling him a bum, said he had a glass jaw. But then after the main event of the bare knuckle fight, without consulting the co-owner Feldman, he says, we're doubling the fighter's purse.
Well, if you saw the video, he looked like he was on something, as usual Conor McGregor style.
Hey, he was just enjoying himself.
But they were talking about fight bonuses because of such a great fight that it was. And then without hesitation, he said, not only are we giving them bonuses, we're doubling the fight purse. Double it right now.
Feldman looked like he saw a ghost.
If you saw his face,
I don't know if that was in the BKFC budget, and maybe that'll be coming out of Conor McGregor's money. But I think, look, it's great to see other promotions doing well, especially on socials. You had some media guys fighting on the BKFC card as well, which was entertaining to watch. Oscar Willis from the Mac Life. He had a good showing, won first round. But I think McGregor's doing great things with BKFC. I think they're going to eventually build up to when they get bought out. But if they're going to go about doubling purses and they haven't consulted each other, that's one way to lose money very quickly.
Is that legally binding? If they don't pay the double purse, is that a contract?
It could be a verbal agreement.
Is that a verbal agreement? Because the fighters would agree to it. That's the offer's there.
I think out of embarrassment, if the fighters say we never got it, that looks pretty embarrassing on the organization. So you got to pay it out of embarrassment.
It's probably going to be coming out of Conor's purse, though. Yeah. I don't think the way the owner looked at him was like, hey, we don't have that money yet. That's coming out of your pocket.
But while Conor was doing media for BKFC, he did announce that he wants to fight Dan Hangman Hooker in February in Saudi Arabia.
Well, this does make a lot of sense. He basically announced it. It wasn't like I want to do this. He's saying, no, this is what's happening February 1st in Saudi Arabia.
Well, would this be before the Sydney card?
No, this would probably be, maybe it's a fight night. I don't know.
It could be a Saudi fight night, but how is Conor McGregor going to be on a Saudi fight night?
Maybe it's like a special Riyadh season pay-per-view that they're going to do. He said,
well, him and Dan Hooker looked like they were getting along. They were drinking together. They were, chopping it up inside the ring at BKFC. And all of a sudden it comes out they're going to fight. He obviously thinks it's a good style matchup for him, Conor, but Dan Hooker came out and kind of put it to bed really quickly. He said, listen, my missus is pregnant. She's due in February. February's off the table, but maybe March, maybe January.
Well, the thing is, Dan Hooker initially was like, hey, I'm on board. Connor's on board.
He wants the money fight, but he said, look, my missus is pregnant. It won't be a red penny.
Well, he said he just needs the UFC to be on board. But looking at it realistically, Conor McGregor is only going to return to one of two places. It's going to be Saudi Arabia or Las Vegas. He's not fighting anywhere else in the world.
Ireland.
Not happening. It's too
It was
small.
scheduled to be Ireland. What are you talking about?
No, that was the
press conference.
That was a press conference for the interview. The fight was supposed to be in Vegas.
That's very true. Sorry.
So he's only going to fight in Vegas or Saudi Arabia. And I say Saudi Arabia because they've got the money.
Turkey El Sheikh.
Conor McGregor has attended every single boxing fight that's been there in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So he's obviously got close relationships with the Saudis. And Dana White needs to put on another event there. They got an appetite for it. So
Conor McGregor headlining a Saudi event is massive. I'd hate to see it at Saudi Arabia. I want to see it, Mystic Mac back in Vegas. But it doesn't really matter. It just depends who his opponent's going to be. And then honestly, he needs to get a win. He needs to finally come back to the UFC and show that he's got legs to return, because otherwise it's just been all talk for the last 3 years and people are just moving on. Michael Chandler's moving on. Dan Hooker, if it doesn't happen, he's just going to move on to hit title eliminator in his division.
You go back just a month. The rumored fights were Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler, and Hangman Page versus Dan Hooker versus Charles Oliveira. Now it's just completely swapped. So Oliveira's versus Michael Chandler, and Hooker's going to versus McGregor. How did they orchestrate this change? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think they're just playing catch up with what they've been given. I'm keen to see how Michael Chandler goes against Charles. And then, I think he definitely calls out Conor after that, and then things change. There's going to be a lot to go into it. The year's almost over. But an early 2025 Conor McGregor fight is on the cards. We just want to see it happen. Let's make it happen.
What if it happens in January? Because there's no fight.
Could happen in January. I think Islam's fighting January, though.
Oh, yeah, against Surukian.
Yeah, so...
Khabib confirmed that.
Look, if it's early Feb in Saudi or probably March, Saudi Arabia, that makes the most sense.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
Yeah. I guess we'll wait and see.
Just come back, please. Just come back.
Someone who's making their return this week, it's kind of a stacked week. We've got Tim Tszyu fighting in Australia. But
He's fighting in Orlando.
Fighting for Australia. Francis Ngannou making his PFL debut finally after fighting these two fights in Saudi Arabia. He's finally making his PFL MMA debut. Is there an appetite for it? Are you going to watch it?
I am going to watch it because I've seen footage of this Rainen Ferreira, who's a Brazilian 7-footer, doing backflips. The guy can do a backflip post-fight as well. So he just won the fight. He celebrates by doing a backflip. I've never seen a 7-footer do a backflip. So Francis Ngannou, this could be a very interesting fight. He's obviously coming off that brutal knockout against Anthony Joshua where he got laid out onto the floor.
Yeah. So that's, again, boxing. It's finally... But Francis Ngannou went on Ariel Helwani's show and said he feels like he's the best heavyweight in the MMA.
Well, that's
right
saying
now.
John Jones, Stipe, Tom Aspinall, he thinks he's better than all of them.
Well, that's what I mean. And it's like you're fighting in PFL. This is what Aspinall kind of alluded to. He said that the best fighters aren't fighting at PFL. You know what I mean? You've got John Jones at the UFC. You've got Tom Aspinall at the UFC. It's hard to get the fans involved with what you're doing if you're not fighting the best over here. And Dana's kind of got a monopoly over that massive UFC marketing machine that the PFL just doesn't have.
Another thing is Francis Ngannou, while on Helwani's podcast, kind of said, I've got receipts of all my payments that I've made post-UFC.
Because Dana White has been saying, listen, I can tell you right now, you don't see what he's getting paid. He's not getting paid more than what he is at the UFC. Everything that's reported on is most likely all bullshit. But, I mean, who are you going to believe? Francis Ngannou, who's getting paid and getting the money, or Dana White, who's at the UFC and probably doesn't want to see Francis succeed outside of the UFC?
Considering Francis has had all his fights in Saudi Arabia, I believe that he's getting paid a lot more than he was getting paid at the UFC. But that goes now. Francis Ngannou, if he does win this fight, does raise his stocks back up in the UFC. But does Dana White actually want him to win? Who does Dana White want to win this fight?
Dana White wants to see Francis Ngannou's stock plummet. He wants a GFC for Francis Ngannou.
But then there's no potential fight back in the UFC.
But he's not a UFC fighter. He doesn't care. He does not care. He's focused on building Stipe Miocic and John Jones, claiming John Jones is the best heavyweight of all time, and promoting his fighters. He doesn't care about Francis Ngannou. He's not under contract.
Dana White,
he wants to see him fail, and he wants him to probably crawl back and beg to say, can I please come back to the UFC?
Dana White is a businessman. And like a businessman, Vince McMahon, who, like Hulk Hogan, left and came back, he wants his stock to rise.
Regardless.
He wants him to come back so he can put on a money fight once he returns.
I could see Francis eventually coming back. Does that mean Dana wants to see him win outside of the UFC?
Yes.
Definitely not. He wants to see him get knocked out by Ferreira, who I'm telling you, most casual fans don't know about. They haven't looked at his history in MMA. They haven't looked at recent PFL fights. He wants the PFL to die. You see it in press conference at the end of Dana White Contender Series. He's just taking a massive shit on the PFL. They got no idea what they're doing. When people suggest, oh, why didn't you do a co-promoted PFL versus UFC? He goes, why would I reduce myself to these people? This is how he looks at them. He says they're a sinking ship. They're wasting so much money. They got no idea what they're doing. He doesn't want to see them succeed. To them, it's competition. And you brought up Vince McMahon. He wants to choke out his competition, WCW, and he did do that. Dana White wants to see PFL. He wants to see all these other, regional promotions that try and compete with the UFC. These Saudi-funded, he wants them dead.
I can see a situation, though, where Tom Aspinall in the future could have a fight against Francis Ngannou. And with that being the case, he'd want him to have his stock at the highest point.
I don't think it's going to happen within the next 3 to 5 years anyway, because I think Francis is pretty much locked in with PFL long term. I think he's scheduled for like 2 or 3 more fights with the PFL.
Hey, you never know.
So
contracts mean nothing
unless
these
they
days.
come to an arrangement. Who knows? But if anything, Dana's supporting Ferreira because if he wins, his stock rises and he brings him over to fight Tom Aspinall and create another UFC star like he has brought over, Asakara, Kayla Harrison.
Yeah, I understand that could be a situation that could occur as well. But I think it's like a part of him that still likes Francis Ngannou. You still worked with him. You still want him to do well. Ferreira, he's 7 foot and can do a backflip, but he doesn't really have... I mean, if he beats Francis, you're right, that does raise his stock. So it could happen.
Let's go over to boxing because it's a big week for Australian boxing with Tszyu finally coming back up against Bakhram Murtazalev. Now, we've got Liam Talivaa from No Limit Boxing, heavyweight, coming in to preview that with us. I'm looking forward to it. Aussies need a big W.
They definitely need a big W. IBF Super welterweight champion on the line for Tszyu. So he's obviously not going back for the title he lost back in March, I think it was, or April. But he's getting another title shot, which should get him back, to the level of where he should be.
He didn't take too much of a stock drop in his last loss because he came out looking very valiant in defeat with the cut. You know what I mean? I think he was winning that fight up until the split, which happened pretty early on.
No, he
had a good showing.
He still probably won the fight. Like, I could have scored it that way.
This is the fight that's going to get him back on track. He's done a lot of media in the lead up saying this Bakhram's a step-aside fighter. Let's get into the preview. Joining us in the studio is Australian heavyweight boxer right now, Liam Talivaa. Liam, we've been trying to tee it up for a while. Thank you for finally coming in.
No, thanks for having me,
How was his
boys.
pronunciation there? Talivaa?
Bro, you know what? He said it in the start, and I was going to say it, but I was like, bro, perfection, bro.
Yeah, no,
perfection.
I practiced it in the mirror 6 times before we came. I've been watching you from afar. Obviously, we've been paying a lot of attention to the Australian boxing scene.
Yeah.
Seeing you kind of on multiple cards here in Australia, especially, Nikita Tszyu card. You were just in Wollongong on the Sammy Goodman card.
Yo.
I think no Limit kind of rely on you when they need a decent fight, when they want someone to throw hands in the heavyweight division. You're coming off a win, your most recent fight in Wollongong. How's the body feeling? How are you going?
Yeah, no, body's back to good, but like we're just still dealing with the wrist fracture that I sustained on that fight, on that night, sorry. So, we're just in the process of getting that all healed up, So
What's the time frame? 6 to 8 weeks, usually?
yeah, well, it was 8 weeks in the splint, and then it came back off it, and then it was still fractured, so it hasn't healed. So I'm like, man, yeah. So now we're just all in the process of strengthening it and getting it back to where it needs to be, bro. So yeah.
Ideally, you come back maybe on a No Limit card. I know there's some rumored cards coming up November, December. Do you want to have a fight before the end of the year?
Man, I would love to, man. I would love to smash one more out, man. It's just we just have to really try and get this back to normal, and then we can see what's on the card.
What's it like working with the No Limit crew? Because we've done some cards with them. We've covered it as media. We went and did the Tszyu fight over in Vegas against Sebastian Fundora. Very professional outfit, probably the most professional here in Australia. What's it like working with the Rose Boys? Are they the standard here with Australian boxing?
Yeah, 100%. We're the number one here in Australia, and they really worked hard to get to where they are today, and they put on the best shows here in Australia, and they're almost as equivalent to the international scene, So they've been making some noise on the international scene, So I think George, the boys got rated, number 5 in the world or something like that. That's huge, bro.
Yeah, they co-promoted with Main Event, like this one
man,
with
like,
Amazon.
You know what I mean?
How does it compare to before they obviously came on board? Because George was playing rugby league maybe, less than a decade ago?
Yeah.
So, like, before the Rose Brothers started doing No Limit, what was the boxing scene like in Australia? Not as professional?
No, wouldn't say as professional, but I guess everyone was giving it a good hot crack. You know what I mean? I think the difference between No Limit and everyone else is they really put the quality in. They're willing to spend the money to make
the production's a lot better.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So you only get out what you put in. So they're doing good jobs, bro.
Yeah, well, like I said, they've kind of built Australian boxing off the back of the Tszyu brothers. They've been the main attractions probably since Paul Gallen. Tim Tszyu's got an upcoming fight, his return fight against Bakhram, Russian boxer. Don't know really too much about him. He's 22-0 right now, undefeated. What are your thoughts on the Tszyu brothers, especially when it comes to Australian boxing? I know last fight we were at the Nikita Tszyu fight. We asked a lot of the boxers, are the Tszyu brothers the face of Australian boxing right now? And do you think there's a lot of pressure on Tim? Because if he loses this fight, what does it mean for Australian boxing?
Yeah, right. In terms of face, the face of boxing here in Australia, we got a lot of great fighters as well. So we got like Jai Pataya as well.
He's killing it in Saudi.
Crazy.
He's just knocking out everyone.
100%. So he's up there, definitely up there. But in terms of them as fighters, bro, they're beasts. Tim and Nikita. Even that fight in where was it? ICC.
Yeah.
That was crazy just for him to
slugfest against Colin Mazzuti. I didn't see that coming.
I did not see that coming. I thought he was going in on the 8th round, came back on a 9th and got the job done. It was insane. I was right there ringside. I'm like, bro, it was crazy.
So does Tim Tszyu fighting this weekend, does him winning, does that mean like a lot for Australian boxers? Like he's laying the pathways for current fighters to go over there?
It is, bro. Like just the adversity and just everything just the resilience of his craft and coming from that loss. It's huge, you know what I mean? So
let's talk about that because he last fought against Sebastian Fundora and a lot of people thought Tim was kind of a bit hard done by.
He got robbed.
He had the cut, you know what I mean? It wasn't really a loss on his record. He gained a lot of respect from the fans and probably a lot of respect from, worldwide boxing.
Definitely.
He's been speaking to Turk Al Sheikh in Saudi Arabia. They're trying to get him over there for a fight. But he's finally, in the running for another title, IBF Super welterweight title. It's finally good to see him back. His last fought in April. How do you see this fight playing out with Tim? Is it this is the fight that gets him back where he was supposed to be and set up that Fundora rematch and kind of laying the platform for Tim to be a worldwide boxer?
Yeah, I think, man, I think this fight is just like just a sort of reminder, of to everyone that like who he is, you know what I mean? And he's before that fight, man, he was that guy, and so it's I don't know. I feel like it's just more.
You were saying off camera before, but like even the fighters, international fighters, it put a lot of name recognition on him. Even though he lost, he didn't really lose much because the reaction to the fight was he's a warrior and he earned so much respect.
Definitely, and that's why I feel like it's just a reminder more than anything. You know what I mean? Because like other than that, whichever way that fight would have went, like he still gained that respect from everyone.
100%.
So.
Well, the thing is now is, like I said, if the pressure is on Tim because he's kind of been living it up in the US. He's been training the house down at the UFC Performance Institute. So all the best technology, recovery, sports science going into Tim Tszyu. This will probably be the best Tim Tszyu that we see,
100%.
right? And if I actually can't see him losing, but if he does lose, it's like, where do you go from here? Do you come back to Australia, having Australian fights maybe against a Michael Zarafa or something like that, or you win and you just, I think take off in the States. He's looking at houses overseas. He's looking at cars overseas. He wants to move to the States. For someone like you, who's probably had majority of their fights in Australia, is that the main goal for Australian fighters, is to make it on the worldwide stage, probably go over to America and make some noise?
100%, that's the goal, man. That's where the money's at as well, So we pretty much work our asses off here just to create that baseline, and then when that's created, then obviously the international scene is where we need to be.
Yeah, where do you think the best international scene for a fighter that's probably got 15 fights on his record? You go over to the UK, you go over to the US, you try and get on a Riyadh season Saudi card like Jai Oppatai, get some good money. Where do you think the best scene for not just heavyweight boxing but boxing in general is right now? Yeah,
man, I feel like obviously.
America.
The States is pretty much, hands down. But man, there's some good quality fighters coming out from the UK, and there's a lot of work out there and a lot of the standard's pretty high up there as well, just as much as it is in the States. I feel like
historically as well, they've always had a big following in
100%
the UK.
in the UK.
They always draw big numbers for fights. They put on good fights.
100%.
And they've had good fighters, which does help.
Yeah. Tim Tszyu's coming into this fight as a favourite, right? And rightly so. He's fought, I think just if you look at his experience level, fighting former champion Tony Harrison. He's beat Ocampo. He beat, Mendoza, who beat Sebastian Fundora.
True.
I just think he's done a lot more work on his resume. Like when you put it up against Bakhram, who's probably fought, 22 fights over the last 10 years. He just hasn't been that active. Tim Tszyu's kind of laughing and saying, no one's really scared of this bloke. I see him as a step-aside fighter. I'm going to get past him and start cementing my legacy in the US.
Yeah.
Do you see anything upsets, or is it just going to be not a one-sided Tim affair, but like you said, just that
definitely.
reminder?
Man, 100%, just a reminder. But I feel like Tim's journey has always been just trying to prove
100%.
everyone.
Yeah.
And you've seen what he can do when he's trying to prove his point. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You get
Early round knockouts.
Yeah. What's that lad name?
The one in the Gold
In
Coast.
GC, yeah.
Yeah,
Bro, he
yeah.
got done so hard, bro. I couldn't believe I swear he threw like 3 uppercuts at one stage. And that's him proving a point.
Yeah.
And I'm a Tim fan, you know what I mean? So him coming into this fight, it was pretty upsetting that loss. But it's just him proving, and then just that reminder as well. It's just
He's locked in. He's
Yeah,
100%
he's just
locked in.
bro,
He's been at the States.
crazy.
I think you're going to see the best version of Tim Tszyu.
But in boxing,
Definitely,
when a fighter does lose, has a massive impact on their career. For example,
yeah,
Tim
yeah.
Tszyu loses to Fundora. All of a sudden, he's not fighting for a title straight away. Has to take time off. Is that what happens in boxing? But one loss can be that damaging to your career, or is it just you put it behind you and it's just your next fight is all that matters?
Yeah, it's man, for myself, speaking from experience, I've come off a loss, and there was it's so important for you to take that step back, really analyze everything that's happened and what could have happened, you know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know, I just hope that Tim Tszyu took that time. Whether it looked like he could have won that, he needs to take those I guess those learning points from it, and then coming in
Become a better fighter.
become a better fighter.
Is that what you thought? I mean, you had that loss against Brandon Gratch, which I thought you were winning that fight up until the KO. I never know what it's like to be KO'd. Right? Talk me through what. So when do you find out you lost? Was it when you come back and come to? And then what was the process after? You analyze the loss. You go watch the footage back. I can be better here. What was that? How did that loss impact you mentally and then going forward? Because you kind of bounced back pretty well and Wollongong got the W.
Yeah, 100%. Well, after it all, it was quite disappointing. But yeah, just like anything, bro, in life, when you get sort of knocked down, bro, you really got to take that step back. But I think it was more mental more than anything, rather the physicality sort of thing of it. It was just, what can I do better to really strengthen my mindset to not get into a fight like that,
Did you make a point to take a bit more time off than usual, not trying to jump straight back in the ring?
Yeah, no, definitely. Look, I had a good team around me, and that was probably the most important thing that I had with me, because knowing me, my ego would been like, let's get this next fight right, then get done again. You know what I mean? So it was in my head. I'm like, let's set up the rematch. There was times that we asked Gratch for the rematch straight away. He said his hand wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So I was just happy, that didn't go forward. But then it was another 3-4 months after that until that fight that just happened in Wollongong. I was like, man, I'm glad that I had that time off, So I was ready. So I hope Tim Tszyu's taking that step back, analysed everything, and ready to come through.
So prediction for Tim Tszyu's fight? I'm gonna go probably
first 5 rounds.
I'm gonna go around 7 KO.
Yeah,
I'm going earlier. First 5 rounds, like you said, he's got to prove a point.
Yeah,
when he wants to prove a point, he goes out there to kill.
He might land one of those free uppercuts on there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I rarely see Tim's fights going to decision or too far, especially when he wants to prove a point. So
I'm barring a cut. If he gets another slip on top of his
I
head,
was going to say that it's going all the way.
After that in.
But even that, he didn't even get knocked out.
How long, those cuts, pretty deep cuts, usually how long do they take to recover?
I wouldn't have a clue, man, to be honest.
Never had one of those?
I'd say you're looking at, I mean, he took a good 6 months. He was supposed to come back, I believe, in
August.
August, and they said no, medicals kind of pushed him because he's still recovering from a cut.
Yeah.
So that's still a good 6 months.
Yeah, no, they said I think you can't spar for a good 6 weeks. That's already 2-3 months there.
But I want to get your opinion, being a heavyweight boxer. I know you've probably got aspirations to move out of heavyweight, but right now, if you had to name your top 3 pound for pound boxers in Australia, Tim Tszyu probably being number 1. Who else do you think are the pound for pound best boxers in Australia?
Man, you got I'll probably say Jai as number 1, Tim as number 2, and you got Liam Parra.
Okay,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? So those 3 lads there, they're really making a good mark on Australian boxing. You
Well,
know?
Liam recently winning a title.
Oh.
I think he's got a defense coming up as well.
Against that lad too, it was crazy.
Yes,
He
surprised a lot of people.
Yeah.
We had Huss
100%.
Hamden, who we know was kind of sparring him,
Yo.
getting ready for his fight. We're helping him over there in
Bro, he's
Orlando.
my boy, Huss Hamden. Yeah,
Yeah.
shout out to my boy. Yeah.
So, I mean, it was awesome to see another Aussie doing well outside of Australia. What separates these guys for them to be able to do it on an international scene? Jai Opetaia, for example. What makes Jai so good? We spoke to Tyson Pedro, who said, mate, sparring him is like going to war. And that's just
Can
sparring.
imagine.
He can actually hit. He looks like to be a level above. He just won recently at Riyadh season over the last weekend. What's so special about Jai Opetaia right now?
Man, I think just doing the work. You know what I mean? A lot of people want to get into boxing or even want to be that person, and it's just doing things like taking shortcuts and all that stuff. You're in there doing the job, bro. You'll go far, and most importantly, having the right team there with
Yeah.
you. That your right team. When you have the right team, making the good connections. Because man, as a fighter, you only just want to just focus on just training and knowing that everything in the background is getting taken care of. You know, and
Yeah.
bro, props to Jai's team, Tim's team, bro, No Limit and all that. It's exactly my point, bro.
With Jai, people obviously say Tim Tszyu's the best boxer in the world, or the best Australian boxer in the world. But Jai Opetaia probably has a lot more
kind of
international runs on the board. People kind of forget about him. Why do
He's
you
been going under the radar.
Why
Yeah,
do
he's
you,
very
why do you
under the
think people
radar, bro.
forget about him for? Why is he not a household name like Tim Tszyu?
I don't know, man. That's what I mean. Like it's, I think it just all depends on just the light that gets shed on it.
I
you
think
know
you're
what
right.
I mean?
I think it's the marketing machine
Yeah.
of like No Limit. You got KO. You know, Jai Opetaia is kind of doing it outside of the Australian media. He's
Yeah.
doing it in Saudi.
Bro, he's doing it
with his
hard
own team
too. Yeah, and he's-
it's like
it
George Kambosos. George Kambosos
Yes,
got
George
to a
Cam-
title
bro, this is-
without this kind of marketing machine behind him. He kind of did it by himself. Jai's kind of on that same path.
100%.
If not, you know, the trajectory is kind of better with the amount of wins he's getting right now.
Yeah.
So because they're not making money from him, they're not promoting him?
Well, no, they're just he's not signed. There's no deal. Like he's not.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
like, because you look at his record and the fights that he's had, he should be up there with like, okay, his next fight's going to be at this time. He doesn't really get the promotion or the viewership that he deserves.
Yeah.
I think it's right. It's just probably the spotlight from
It
media.
is, bro. It is. And the thing is that like right now, like No Limits is Australian boxing.
It is.
That's it. You hear Australian boxing, no one knows anything else but No Limit.
Yeah, right.
And Tim Tszyu's on it, Nikita's on it. You know what I mean? So
That's where the face is. Yeah,
That's where it's
the
at.
spotlight is.
yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
I want to get your thoughts on the heavyweight division, not just Australian heavyweight boxing, but worldwide.
Yeah.
You've got Usyk,
Yeah.
who like you is a southpaw, right? Who we can probably consider as the best right now.
Yo.
Who do you think is the most underrated heavyweight right now? Because AJ just coming off a loss.
Yeah, right.
Tyson Fury, you could kind of say, not that he's done, but coming off that loss, probably needs to redeem himself. Who do you think is the most underrated, well-rounded heavyweight boxer?
Man. Bro, I can't really put a finger on it right now. But man, speaking on AJ's fight, that Dubois guy is quite underrated,
solid.
bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think because of his size, and it doesn't look like he can pack a punch. But after that,
He's got some power in
I
his
think
right
everyone's
knockdowns,
there.
yeah, 5
Yeah.
knockdowns, yeah, probably got some power behind you.
Yeah,
There's
bro.
a lot of
straight
raps
out.
on Joseph Parker as well.
Oh yeah,
Joseph Parker is recently helping out John Jones, preparing for his, UFC heavyweight
Very
fight as
random
well.
combination.
Now, well, John Jones has assembled like a super team to
Yeah,
help
bro,
him for his
straight
UFC
out.
fight. He's got
Straight out.
Gable Stevenson there helping out with his wrestling, Gordon Ryan with his jiu-jitsu, and then he's got Joseph
Joseph
Parker
Parker
there
for
for
his
his
boxing.
striking.
Yeah.
So I think like John Jones has just kind of got the Avengers looking after him to get him ready for this fight. Have you ever had anything to do with Joseph Parker, and how do you see him, fitting in with these like international heavyweights like Zhang and himself being a well-rounded heavyweight?
Bro, yeah, he's the OG of the heavyweight scene around here in Australia and New Zealand. You know what I mean? But yeah, bro, just what he's able to do from I couldn't believe like he accomplished so much at a young age, and then
He's had like a career resurgence last 3 years.
because when he started coming back
Yeah.
I was like, isn't this guy old? But he's not, bro. I'm like, no, he's not. He's like, we're not far from age. You know what I mean? I was like,
Crazy.
so, but big props to him because, what he's doing right now is crazy. I feel like he's just caught a second wind and taking every advantage they can take and just really execute everything, bro. He's doing like funny videos on call outs on things. It's like mad. He's like using every kind of angle in boxing to really
Yeah, no,
market
he's been
himself,
very
you know?
entertaining. I think he's going to feature a lot more on the Riyadh season fights coming
Yeah,
up,
bro.
especially into next year. What I wanted to ask you about is the heavily rumored November card. It's supposed to be a rugby league, no limit boxing fight night. You got Willie Mason rumored to be on there. Gordon Tallis at 51 years old could potentially be fighting on there. What are your thoughts as an Australian boxer of rugby league players coming into boxing, especially from a marketing standpoint? And how do you see Big Willie going in the ring?
Yeah, right. Well, man, look, I have no like
Ill will or anything like that?
nah, with the boys coming in having a crack, and to be honest, man, like where No Limit is today is because of the G Train. You know, Paul Gallen, man, and he's a good friend of mine, and And in terms of Willie Mason and Gordon Tallis, man, I'm a New South Wales, you know what I mean? So that's just automatic
we hope
anyway.
Gordon gets KO'd.
without even putting the stats together, I'm already, you know
Are
what
you
I mean?
putting your hand up
Mason-
to fighting?
Hey?
You putting your hand up to fighting?
We might have to, bro. Nah.
Is that elderly abuse?
But yeah, Willie Mason, bro, he's a giant, man. So
Big boy.
Big boy.
I don't know if he stepped foot in the boxing ring. I know we've seen Nelson Asafa Solomona. He's been on his Instagram getting back into the ring. Tavita Pangai Jr. recently came and went from boxing. It's interesting to see. It's a career path outside of rugby league for him. But who do you think some of the best rugby league boxers have been? You've got your Sonny Bills, your G Train, obviously.
Barry Hall.
Yeah, who do you think? Who do you think? I don't know if you're a big rugby league fan, but could definitely
Yeah.
make the transition over and potentially be on this no limit card.
Ooh, man. I don't know, man. I don't know,
There's
man.
been there's
That's-
rumors of
but-
Latrell eventually making.
Latrell,
I think,
yeah.
I think they said once he retired. I don't think it'll be anytime
right.
soon.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see someone that can come and do what Mundine done. You know what I mean? Because he was a footy player.
Yeah.
And crazy, man, what he done. So we just got to see
Who's
his
gonna put their hand up?
yeah, man. But like every time I see those the forwards in NRL, I'm like, bro, I would love to see these guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have a good crack. Who was it?
What about you as a heavyweight boxer
Yeah.
in tremendous shape? Like you're probably the fittest you ever been.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Has there ever been a thought in your mind like, I wonder if I could play 40 minutes on a rugby league?
Bro. It's
Maybe
always in my head.
I'd be the one to transition and get me in a preseason.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can cut in rugby league. Have you ever thought about that?
100%.
Yeah?
100%. Because when I was playing footy back in the day in Penrith, I didn't take it too serious, you know. I wasn't at the best shape of, that I could be in. But now that I am, because I'm boxing and that, I'm just like, far out, man. I wonder if I'll be good.
Yeah.
You know, and I was a forward and I was playing the centers. And I was just like, I
Yeah,
wonder
they do that now. Sit for Talakai.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Super, 100%.
So you think you could definitely, like, you would like to see yourself
love
how
to
you would go in like a New South
Well,
Wales Cup.
it's always a thought, right? And
Yeah.
then when I go and just have a little think about just going having a little run, I'm like, I might break my ankle or something like that. And I definitely can't box, you know what I mean? So I just
Not
don't-
worth it, never
Yeah, I
worth
just
it.
like, all good.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's get our prediction, early prediction. It's not confirmed, but say it is to be Willie Mason versus Gordon Tallis. I don't know if they would fight each other or they just signed on to do the event. But say they're to fight each other. Who you got?
Willie Mason. Willie Mason easily.
Willie
It's not
Mason,
even a
bro.
question. The size of Willie Mason,
Yeah,
he
but-
looks like he's in the best shape of his life
Sure.
as well.
Devil's advocate, Gordon Tallis could throw him back in the day. You've seen the highlights of
Yeah,
Gordon
bro,
Tallis
yeah.
just squaring up for absolutely no reason.
Yeah,
now, I'm sure
100%.
Big Willie can go as well. He's got reach as well. Big
Yeah,
man. I wouldn't count out Gordon Tallis. The only thing that's killing him is probably his age. He's 51 years old.
he's not-
Willie, you could say he's in his 40s, but mate, the
He
guy still
looks-
looks like he's 30-something.
Gordon Tallis looks like he's approaching his 60s. Willie
Yeah.
Mason looks like he's in his 30s. Looks like he's in his prime.
Yeah.
If they were to fight, that'd be unfair.
Yeah, Willie keeps himself in good nick.
He
He's always
does, he
training with
does.
Braithen Astor.
Yeah.
Rennie
Rennie
Matua.
Matua, the boys that get back
They're
together.
just
Oh.
always looking good. I think they moisturize well as well. It's like they're just
What are you
good
looking at?
looking.
What are you looking at?
They maintain their youth.
100%.
It's going to be good to see Willie on a card. I'll pay to see it. I'll pay to see it.
100%.
But now I want to ask you, Liam, what's the next moves for you? You're coming off this wrist injury. What's the ideal map for you, for the rest of 2024 going into 2025?
Yeah, obviously, just coming off this trying to maintain this wrist injury, but yeah, maybe like Australian title. That's been in the talks, and definitely the rematch. And there's a lot of other guys there that's in the mix as well. So just whoever comes in, but like the 2025, definitely Australian title, man.
So when you think about potential opponents, does your team approach No Limit and say, listen, we're putting our hand up, we want this fight, or do No Limit generally come to you and go, hey, listen, we've got this opportunity, could be potential Australian title fight, could be a Brandon Gratch rematch. What's the process really like to set you up for a fight?
It's both of those options, you know what I mean? So just whichever comes first, to be honest. Like sometimes they'll just like line one up along with the cards.
Okay.
But just all depends on how the boys really structure the fight nights.
And with the Australian title, I know you just come off a recent victory. Do you think you could jump in straight for an Australian title fight right now, or do you want to get another win on the board, get some momentum going, maybe the rematch before the title?
Yeah.
Right that wrong, and then fight for an Australian title? What's the ideal plan for you? Do you want that title first?
Yeah. Oh man, if the title fight came up first, then it's the title. We'll take it. But other than that, like I'm all for someone that just lets everything plan out for itself. I just do the work. You know what I mean? So just see what happens.
Stay in
first,
shape and be ready.
Yeah, 100%. That's pretty much it. Eh?
Yeah. And what's the ultimate goal in the heavyweight division? You want to reach that Australian title status. Do you see yourself trying to get potential fights overseas?
Yeah.
Looking to 2025, is that where you kind of want to be?
Yeah, 100%. I really want to just like make my mark here in a heavyweight division, and then just see where it takes me. You know what I mean?
Any fighters in bridgerweight, heavyweight that you see like, I could knock that bloke out. Yeah, but you're looking because you got Tyson Pedro stepping into the space.
Yeah.
You got Trzewski who beat Paul Gallen, scheduled to fight Pedro. Curtis Scott is in the mix. He's been fighting on No Limit. I think he's set to fight pretty soon as well. Anyone you think you're like, I'll give him a good crack?
Oh, man, I just feel like bridgerweight's just where that's where I belong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we just have to see, man. Like I said, I got my eyes here on the heavyweight division, but like bro,
What do you have to cut down to go to bridgerweight?
Bro, it's surprisingly, I fight 103. I just got to drop 2 more kilos just to be 101.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
So you're right there
You're
already.
pretty much a bridgerweight.
Pretty much. I'm pretty much
because
there.
heavyweights don't generally cut.
Nah.
I mean, we saw Joey Leilua look like he was about 140 kilos. Didn't look like he was going to go deep into the rounds,
man.
but it's is it a big difference when you fight a lot larger heavyweights? Because not to say that you're a smaller heavyweight, but a lot of the heavyweights you've gone up against a bit of a size mismatch.
Oh, of course, yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Probably longer reach. How much difficult is it to, square up against some of those bigger heavyweights?
It's well, obviously they got the height advantage, reach advantage, but like my main goal is to obviously be, I guess, a lot lighter, faster, because that's what I'm gonna have
the point of
over
difference.
them. You know what I mean? And but at the same time, like my power doesn't go. So the lighter I can go, obviously the more advantage I have because the power's still there anyway. So.
And you're right there, 2 kilos.
Yeah, I know. That's right. That's right. So
yeah, well, let's get this rematch. Let's get this rematch going. Brandon Gratch,
yeah.
hurry up and get back. I know we've seen you at the ICC. He's been fighting well, but I think
Stop ducking him.
I think Liam's entitled to a right of reply. I'd like to see that happen. But
100%.
No, Liam, thank you so much for coming in. It was great to break down the Tim Tszyu fight. Let's get behind our boy Tim Tszyu this week. We've all taken our bets. Mine is Tim Tszyu via knockout this week. Yeah. You're taking the same?
Fight won't start round 6.
Okay, I like it. Liam Talivaa, tk you for coming in. We've got to do this again, especially in the lead up to your next fight.
100%, man. Such a pleasure. Thanks for having me, boys.
Perfect.